Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here. We're back for another video, and today we're going to be talking about Offlane Abaddon. The reason why Offlane Abaddon has come to my attention, well, I would say there's two main reasons. Number one, everyone is picking it now. It seems really popular. The Blast Slam tournament is going on, and it's being first phase picked by gaming gladiators and chosen by other teams as well. We also saw it from BetBoom in the previous tournament, so it seems like Offlane Abaddon is rising in popularity, but on top of that, it's also a 58% win rate hero, pretty unbelievable number on Dota 2 Pro Tracker, right? Over 1,400 games, it has a 58% win rate. That is quite unbelievable. So we're going to be watching Seb's offlane gameplay on the Abaddon. He pops off this match and really goes the build that I think is best, and so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but nonetheless, let's talk about offlane Abaddon and why it's so powerful. On top of that, go sign up to the gameleap website, guys. I'm posting new content over there almost every day, and I'll see you there. Okay, so the first thing we have to start with is actually his facets. I know this might be a little bit boring, but honestly, both are incredibly powerful and deserve to be talked about. I think without his facets, this hero would be way worse. So first off, he has Mephetic Shroud. This basically makes the shield much better. It actually increases the cooldown, which is a negative, but it increases the amount of damage it absorbs. It also lasts longer, and instead of dealing damage when the shield explodes, it deals damage the entirety of the shield duration. So essentially, it makes it where the shield reliably deals damage to the enemy when you're trading, rather than potentially absorbing a ton of damage and then them juking the explosion and taking no damage. Does that make sense? However, the other facet, the quickening, is insane. It's really good. Units dying near Abaddon lower his cooldowns. Essentially, if a unit, or a creep, let's say, it can be any type of creep, dies near him, it lowers his cooldowns by 0.2 seconds. This might not sound like a lot, but it actually is. And if a hero dies nearby, it lowers the cooldown by 4 seconds. This includes allies as well, and so it's a lot of CDR. Both have a 58% win rate. Mephetic Shroud actually has a slightly higher win rate, but I think the quickening might be better than people realize. The reason why, and we're going to be looking at it in today's gameplay because Seb actually takes it, is because it works on items. Hey, you heard that correct. The cooldown reduction works on items. And so it works on phase boots, harpoon, anything, right? And so it's really quite broken, and this hero overall is pretty insane. So starting off with it, let's talk about starting items. His starting item build is a little crazy. A lot of people actually buy Quelling Blade on this hero, but it's a universal hero, so stats are the name of the game. It's much more common to see 2 circlets, which will be turned into bracers. It is actually very weird that he did this instead of 2 circlets and tangos, considering he's, well, at least has 2 bracers queued up. But nonetheless, this is very standard starting items. At level 1, you're going to take your shield, at level 2, you're going to take your E, and essentially you put the shield on yourself when you want to go for last hits. You especially want to use it when you go for the range creep, because that's of course the most dangerous creep. Another reason why the quickening can be a little bit weird in the lane, right, because we're looking at the quickening, is the shield will explode at a somewhat random point, and this can cause you to miss last hits. In this case, it actually helped them get 2 last hits, which is super nice. It did a ton of damage. And as I was mentioning, it actually is lower cooldown when you have quickening, not only because of the cooldown reduction from the facet, but that's just because of how Mephetic Shroud works. It makes the ability slightly worse technically. So at level 2, you get a point of Curse of the Avernus. This really isn't that good yet. It's not a bad ability. It deals 15 damage per second for 2 seconds, so it's 30 damage. And of course you can reapply it. It's also a 10% slow and 10 attack speed increase on the person that you're hitting. But really it's not that good. It doesn't do that much, and you shouldn't consider level 2 some insane spike. I would say level 3 is a much bigger spike if you decide to skill Curse of the Avernus, which is what I recommend because the shield doesn't scale that well. It also increases in mana cost a lot, which is pretty rough. So I think it's much better to go 0-1-2 and then max out the shield afterwards, so you have shield max by 7. Some people actually do max curse by 7 though, and we'll get into that in a moment. Now in terms of items, it's either going to be, well, actually there's quite a lot of variation, guys. I personally think that the Bracer Rush is the way to go. There are some people that rush Orb of Venom, and I do believe it's a little overrated. I think people think Abaddon is completely untradeable, but I mean, yes, the hero is incredible at level 1 because of his high movement speed. The W is one of the best trading abilities in the game. It's sort of low mana, right? So there are reasons why people think this, and Ooh First is not bad. However, I think generally just having that extra bit of sustain and the extra bit of stats from Bracer to give you a little bit of damage to last hit is a tad better until you get to that level 2 in Curse. Now, it makes quite a bit of sense in my opinion to pick up the Orb of Venom as your second item, but he decides to go double Bracer. I have a feeling this is because he's against a Tusk Monkey lane, which is a lane that can absolutely fight back against Abaddon, right? It's certainly one of the best possible lanes you could have here. Heroes, I would say Monkey King is quite a good response. But you'll notice at level 3, this is where the hero starts to get very, very powerful. Your E now deals 50 damage, the slow is 50% better, and the attack speed increases double, right? So you in your position 4 can really start to chunk heroes as they go for a pretty aggressive dive here, right? As the W just kicking in. And again, when all these creeps are dying around him, oh, look at this. This is pretty insane, right? This is the quickening coming into play. When all these creeps are dying around him after the shield, it's lowering the cooldown. You might not exactly see it, but it's ticking in a very weird way. And when the Tusk dies, boom, you just have another shield. And so you can see why I love the quickening. It's just very mana intensive, and that is why I'm a little surprised that he doesn't have a wand. I think the reason he probably doesn't is it's not very good against Monkey King, right? Monkey King is not a hero that spams spells. Tusk is okay, but it's not the best wand lane. However, if it's a good wand lane, you should absolutely buy wand over Bracer or over a second Bracer. You're a universal hero, so the stats are incredible, and you desperately need the mana. He's laning with an IO, so he's getting carried on the mana department, but you should not bank on having an IO every game. I mean, you definitely will not have an IO every game, and so you need to be buying Wand over Bracer in the majority of matches. And so yeah, he gets off to a good start, and at this point, with the Orb of Corrosion double Bracer timing, now you truly are overpowered. I mean, this hero gets insane. I mean, look at this clip here. It looks like a pretty innocent start to the fight. I mean, the Monkey King actually gets Jingu, and they just run him down. I mean, you hit nasty hard. This IO combo is really powerful as well, but honestly, Abaddon just typically does that much damage. So at this point, there's two schools of thought. He's on his Phase Boots timing a minute 8, he is nasty strong, and he even took the tower. Now, Abaddon is really great at taking towers. Orb of Corrosion works on towers, right? It deals the damage per second to towers, and also Curse of the Avernus works on towers, so it increases the attack speed of creeps and allies on buildings, and it deals damage. It deals 70% less, but it's still a ton, right? Because you're going to be hitting the building all the time, right? And you have Orb of Corrosion ticking, so it really adds up quick. He decides to get active this game, which ends up being quite nice. They find a Phoenix kill, they force the Tiny to TP out, which is great. And so this is definitely a way you can play the game. I'll be honest though, guys, 9 times out of 10, just sit in your lane and farm. This is one of those heroes where you don't jungle too quickly yet, so you really want to take lane creeps for as long as possible. In this game, he ends up dealing a lot of damage to mid tower, and you can see Seb's mindset here. Use the HP, right? Use the shield and the ulti timing to put pressure on buildings, right? Taking the bottom tower, taking the mid tower, and oh my god, he's chunking them down. Saves his IO, okay. Almost saves his IO. Gets his team a double kill, and is going to transition this into a mid tower. And yeah, that's why this gameplay can absolutely work. I mean, your E plus the corrosion timing, you can chase anyone down, and you kill buildings, look at this, really, really quickly. I mean, that was 2 times speed, but you get the point. Really, really quickly. I will say, I think it is absolutely criminal not to buy Magic Wand on this hero. I think it is, frankly, ridiculous. I don't understand why you wouldn't. He has 3 branches in his backpack as a universal hero, and this hero is constantly fighting in the front line and desperately needs mana. I think Wand is beyond a no-brainer on this hero. I think Seb not buying here is it's a bit crazy. I think it's maybe more than crazy, maybe insane. But he's playing a very active add-on, and this is the fun of the hero. If you stomp the early game, you can get active and just chase people down. It's certainly a way. I've seen the hero played multiple times. I watched Amar play Abaddon Offlane, and he did the exact same thing. He's just running at people off cooldown. I mean, look at this. It is the tempo you could play at the hero, transitioning into another tier 1 tower, and creating immense space for his carry Beastmaster and his very greedy mid lane puck. So, because maybe he has a very greedy safe laner and a very greedy mid, he feels that this is the way to play, and I can totally see that. It's doing a lot this game. However, let's say your mid is a tiny, then there's probably less of a need to do this. You're going to have a hero creating the space for you, and you can start, as you get points in your E and points in your W, to farm a lot of neutrals. Also, he's under-leveled for what you would typically be at level 12, because the IO is following him around a lot. So, he's much higher net worth than his XP typically is. Now, transitioning into the mid game, there's a couple things to talk about. First of all, let's talk about skill build and talent build. So you max out your E, then you max out your W. After that, there's a lot of things you can do. Some people will max the Q. It's not a bad ability. It heals allies. It heals you if your ulti is active. It's quite a lot of damage. it's fine, it's really not bad, but you're a universal hero, and so taking all stats is particularly good. You get more damage than the average hero, right? Than the average strength, agility, or intelligence hero. And so most players, because you're a right clicker, take stats now. He actually opts to take the 10 talent. Some people skip the 10 talent until level 16. I actually think it's quite bad. I think both of the 10 talents are really good, and I agree with Seb for taking one of them. I actually believe that the one on the left is really, really broken if you're super aware of it. It's 12 HP regen when you are affected by a photic shield that works on allies as well. And Abaddon actually has major sustain issues. Now, maybe this game, because he's with IO, he doesn't need it, and that's fine. But in the average game, it's actually really hard to regen with Abba. Typically, the best way to do it is through a neutral item, but if you take Arcane Ring like he does, and you buy a Harpoon, which is a mana item like he does, you need HP regen some sort of way. And so if this is a situation where your neutral item is a mana item, please at level 10 take 12 HP regen as your way to sustain in between fights, because trust me, it does become a problem. You are a frontliner, you're going to get low. It's not like your ulti is just going to heal you to full every single fight. And so yeah, I actually suggest that. Take the 10 talent and then skip the Q altogether and just take stats. Now there's only one other bit of variation that I think is good, that actually Ace did in his recent match on Abaddon Offlane, which is you take 1 point in Miscoil so that when you buy your shard, you can use your shard. And he actually bought shard after Echo Saber instead of completing Harpoon. He went Echo Saber, I believe into Yasha, then shard, or Echo Saber shard. And what the shard is it causes your Miscoil to deal your attack damage, which is obviously pretty good, you're being a right clicker. And it applies effects from items and abilities. So it applies Echo, Corrosion, and Curse of the Avernus, right? So it's a big slow, and it's a range slow, which I think is pretty nice, except for the fact that I think buying a Harpoon is kind of just better. So I would personally suggest what Seb is doing here, which is skip the Q, take stats, and take your 10 talent at level 10. Now in terms of teamfight execution, guys, there's really only one thing you have to do. Typically you just Harpoon the first person in front of you. If you can choose between a lot of targets, typically you should choose the squishiest target, the easiest to kill. And in terms of using shield, it actually depends on the game a little bit. If the enemy team has a lot of dispellable abilities, maybe don't shield yourself immediately. Wait a second, see if they cast them on you, and then dispel it. For instance, if you're against a Venomancer, right, his Q. If you're against an Ember Spirit, his chains, right? For approaching these heroes, you need to think if there's something to dispel, like this game against Phoenix. Maybe a Fire Spirit, right? If you know he's about to use his egg. He's going to try to put down a Fire Spirit on you right before he clicks egg. And that can be a good idea. But yeah, as I was saying in this team fight, I mean, you kind of just hit the first person next to you. His team, not having a great fight here, is going to have to get out. Gets bailed out by Zio, which is pretty nice. But execution, I mean, it's part of the reason the hero has a high win rate. The execution is incredibly simple, but it's really useful. Having a guy who's just going to start the fight by walking in and clicking Harpoon, which we'll see in a moment here, right, as he's going to connect with his team. As the team fight breaks out, it's really useful to have a guy like this who's just going to walk in, give vision, and basically start the fight, right? He's just trying to get on top of someone, give vision, takes out the Mars. Such a huge slow. It's a 40% slow with the 10 talent, which I really don't think you need because you already have a slow with Corrosion. So it's already around 40% without the 10 talent, and you have Echo Slaver slow. But yeah, again, as I was saying, in team fights, generally just going on the first person and giving vision. He TB's in here, looking for an opportunity to save his puck, doesn't find the puck, so he's going to go on Mars. And this is great. He's going to control the Mars, keep him in place, pops his ulti. His ulti gets popped really early. That was a tad unfortunate. It took a lot of damage, but it is what it is. You're frontlining at the end of the day, so it's fine. And he just kind of opens up the fight for his team. And that's what's really nice. It ends up not going the best, honestly. It looks like maybe the Monkey King got away on a low amount of health. But by him showing the enemy team, it's quite huge, right? Because it allows the Beastmaster to get a clear angle. Unfortunately, as I said, it didn't work out. Somehow they didn't get like almost anything from this fight as the Tusk TP's out. But still, that is the value of your hero. At level 15, you take Curse of the Avernus DPS. This talent is quite insane. 50 damage per second on the E, bringing it from 45 to 95. It's more than a double. I mean, there's not a lot of talents that have that luxury. And now when you farm, you want to split up your auto attack. So if you're doing it efficiently, you're going to want to hit each creep once. You'll see he's going to let that initial creep die to the E. He's not doing it for all the creeps. Oh, he's broken here. Okay, so it wasn't working. Yeah. But when you're farming a creep wave, if you're truly efficient, you kind of hit you split up the auto attacks, because in order to kill a lane creep at this point, it's like a couple of ticks of E and 2 auto attacks. And so by splitting up the autos, you can farm camps and waves faster. Like here, it's a little, I mean, he's not perfectly efficient. You can be better than Seb. You can win 3 TIs maybe if you use Curse of the Avernus perfectly. But yeah, you can split up the auto attacks so that the E comes into play. I would say it's less important before the 15 talent, but it's really important when you do get the 15 talent. In terms of your next item, you buy Sanjin Yasha, one of the most broken items in the game, just the best frontlining item in the game. And after that, there's a lot you can buy, guys. Like, and I mean a lot. You can buy your Ags if your team needs heals. You can buy Blade Mail if it's a good game for Blade Mail. You can buy Eye of Scotty if it's a bunch of ranged heroes and healing on the enemy team. You can buy a Blink Dagger if your team needs you to really catch people. You can buy an Orchid. I mean, honestly, it doesn't even look like a great Orchid game. I'm not gonna lie, there isn't exactly some like spirit hero to silence, but maybe he feels that the enemy team doesn't have Dispels, like the Tiny doesn't have BKB yet. You know, and honestly, I guess he's gonna have to use it on subs because the enemy cores are gonna have BKBs soon. But sure, if he's aware of that, then this Orchid can have a lot of value as well. So I definitely love the item combination Seb ends up coming up with here, which is Nullifier Orchid. This combo is really powerful because it makes items like Ghost Scepter completely useless and allows you to really kill heroes like Phoenix. I mean, for instance here, he should drop the Orchid. Oh, dude, Orchid him! Oh my god! That was such a free kill, what in the world? But yeah, I mean, he ends up taking a big go here, right? Even though he should have solo killed that Phoenix, I mean, whatever. Huge damage. I mean, you right-click so hard at this point. Look at this, he's hitting for 340. And that's with nasty high attack speed because you're a universal hero. He's taken a lot of stats at this point. I mean, I'll check it out for you guys. I think it's like, what, 12 all stats, 14 all stats? Something like, I think it's 12. By the way, level 20, I actually think Aphotic Shield Barrier Mount is better. The other one looks like the better core one. It's like, oh, DPS during my ult. And yeah, it's not bad, but especially if you take Quickening, it's just better to have more and better barriers considering how many you get with this facet. But even with the other facet, I actually think 100 damage per second in the mid game, or more so the late game, I mean, it's level 20, is not that great. It's also a 400 AoE, which is quite low. One cute thing about it is that it affects Abaddon, and so it heals you. So if there's an argument for it, it would probably be that, and I can see it for that reason. At level 25, I believe that the Curse of the Avernus attack speed bonus is too good. Some people will argue for AoE Miscoil, mainly because it works with the Shard, which he did end up picking up here, right, which is quite nice. I personally believe if you're going to bother buying the Shard, it's probably better to max the Q because it increases cast range and lowers cooldown, but sure, I mean, I can see why people would prefer the 6 all stats. Again, you're a universal right-clicker. But alright, it's going to be about all for today's video. This hero is quite straightforward. I mean, I don't feel like there's that much for me to talk about in terms of like farming patterns and teamfight execution. You kind of just initiate on the first guy you see, click your shield off cooldown, and if you're really, really locked in, I mean, maybe you're shielding your allies, but generally you're just kind of shielding yourself. Obviously, it is useful to shield allies if they're getting orchided or just anything that's really important to dispel. It is great to be aware of those types of things. But yeah, Abaddon, it's the highest winner hero, or has been one of the highest, if not the highest winner hero across all brackets for, I want to say, close to a year now, it feels. And now it's being picked up in the pro scene. So arguably Abaddon is the best hero in Dota in multiple roles. And that's, you know, that's pretty impressive. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one, and I'm out.
And that's all, but remember, before you leave, come on, before you tune out, subscribe to the GameLeap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace!